Hey everyone, Sawkill and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to give you some full book recommendations that are not romances. I've done a separate video on cozy full romances that you can find on Scribd. This one is for fantasy contemporary, for books with supernatural elements, for some not especially violent mysteries. I myself am a scaredy cat and I cannot handle horror, so this video is going to be for you if your tastes align. This video, as the previous one, is going to double as books that you can find on Scribd. Scribd is a monthly subscription that allows you to read ebooks and audiobooks. It's not unlimited because, as far as I understand, certain publishers have different agreements with the app's creators, but overall I find this app very worthy and very useful because they tend to change up their collection a lot and they add new releases frequently. The first book that I want to recommend actually is a new release. It's 𝕻𝕻𝕻𝕻 Boys. This title is so loud right now. It's on the New York's bestseller list and been there for a couple of weeks, I believe, and I'm very happy about it because it's a young adult fantasy contemporary from 𝕊𝕼𝔻𝕋𝕀𝕆ℕ𝕊 trans order about 𝕊𝕼𝕻𝕋𝕀𝕆ℕ𝕊 character. This book is amazing. It's simply good. This is a story about a boy named Yadriel that wants to prove his family that he's a real brujo. All the brujos in his family master the death magic. It implies helping the souls that are stuck on Earth to finally transfer to another realm. Yadriel and Maritza go to the cemetery at night to perform a ritual that would bind Yadriel to the goddess of death and would allow him to use his magic, but the ritual tanks and he wakes up another soul, and now he's tasked with the soul's unfinished business because the guy can't leave Earth until he does this last thing for himself. In theory it seems like an easy thing to do, but Yadriel is conflicted because he's also attracted to this man. I love the voice of the protagonist. The world building was so whimsical and so entertaining and vast and interesting. Just top-notch world building. Love the relationships between Yadriel and all the other people in this book. Genuinely found this to be such a fun autumnal read, and Scribd, if you're using Scribd, has an audiobook for this. The audiobook is pretty great, so I do recommend it. The next series that I want to recommend that is also on Scribd is His Fair Assassin series by Lafevers. It was a bit popular in the previous years on BookTube, but I feel like no one actually read it, or a very small percentage of people that hold these books, because they are gorgeous books, actually read and reviewed it. It is an unpopular genre for BookTube in general. It's a young adult historical fantasy. I do feel like fantasy is very hyped on BookTube, especially young adult fantasy, but when it comes to historical stuff, it's crickets. No one really likes reading historical fiction. Well, not a lot of people on BookTube, which is very sad for me because I love historical fiction. I feel like people make connections to history classes when they pick up historical fiction and they don't really like that idea, so what can you do? Anyway, this is a historical fiction mostly with some romance elements and some fantasy elements. The fantasy elements are so minor that you can literally ignore them. Each book in the series follows an assassin nun. These are women unwanted by society that ended up in a convent which serves the god of death. All these women have a special connection with this god. They are basically this god's assassin. So they see the mark on someone else's body, the mark of death, and they must kill this person. A lot of the series is very political because these assassins infiltrate the courts and help move the needle by killing people. The books in the series are pretty thick, but they're good books to dedicate weekends to and just enjoy leisurely. So the next book that I want to recommend is one I've read for Halloween last year. It is 𝕊𝕍𝕋 by Octavia 𝕻�·Butler. It's a vampire book. This one was very different from what I've read in the past. The vampires in this were low-key succubuses too. So at the start of the novel, the protagonist wakes up. She doesn't know who she is, her name, what she is, where she is. She doesn't have one memory of her past, but she feels very hungry and she realizes that she's hurt, so she starts hunting animals in the wood and eating them. She escapes the woods that she woke up in and sees a car. The car stops. The man in the car is very upset when he sees her because she's clearly beaten up, and through some coercion on her part, because I think we're very clear at this point that she's not a human, he promises that he's going to help her figure out what happened to her and if she has someone to take care of her. This was a pretty dark novel with some very curious vampire lore. I definitely have not encountered something similar in the past. Octavia 𝔻𝕉𝕁 is a master of words and suspense. I was literally glued to the book because I wanted to know what's going to happen next. The only thing that I want to mention that is going to be a turn off for people is that the protagonist looks very young. She looks about 12, 13, and she engages in consensual sexual dynamics with other people that are older than her. The next is a classic that I genuinely feel like all people need to read. It's The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Now, I know what you're thinking. A classic? Do I really want to dedicate the time? Just imagine how many memes will make sense after you finish the book. It is not only incredibly smart and suspenseful, it's also low-key funny, and I highly recommend it because it is one of my favorite classics of all time, and I feel like it is the best choice for fall. The next one is a mystery novel that I think is not as cozy as all the other choices I have today for you, but it is an incredible novel, especially the audiobook. I highly recommend the audiobook. It's Sadie by Courtney. It is about a girl that wants to revenge the death of her brother and that disappears. The case becomes very popular and a famous true crime podcaster starts investigating it. The audiobook has a full cast. There are sounds and music. It's very, very entertaining. I feel like listening to the audiobook is a completely different experience when it comes to this book. The story itself is also very engrossing, even though it sometimes is darker than we're looking for in this video, but I highly recommend it regardless. It's a young adult mystery, but it doesn't feel like a young adult mystery. The next, of course, is my fave. I cannot miss on recommending it in every single video. It's Sawkill Girls by Legrand. Huge fan of Legrand. Love the topics that she decides to tackle. This one is a contemporary fantasy with some elements of magic, with some elements of secret societies and demons. Basically, it's about this family that moves to an island after the father of the family dies. It's the mother and two daughters. The mother finds a job as a housekeeper in a rich family's house. It's also just a mother and the daughter. The daughter strikes a friendship with the youngest sister, and the oldest one finds it very suspicious and dangerous. She's not incorrect in her assumptions because her little sister ends up dead. So she starts investigating, and with the help of a friend that is also a point of view character, she discovers that this island has a history of disappearing girls. This one is so dark, it's so delicious. It's not a horror, but it has some elements of horror, some things that definitely creep me out. But overall, it's just a supernatural story. I enjoyed the dynamics between the characters. They were incredibly complex. It features an FF relationship and also a fantastic asexual character. The character is also black. The intersection of these two is so rare, I really appreciated it. The story itself is so engaging and creepy too. I loved it. I feel like it's going to make a cool TV show or a movie, but when we will ever see supernatural queer movies? They're so rare because no one wants to fund them. The next book that I want to recommend is a middle grade series. I've only read the first book, but I really liked it. It is City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab. I love Victoria Schwab in general. I love her writing style. I love the plots of her novels. I love her characters. This one is about a girl whose family believes in the supernatural. They were hired to film a show all over the world about ghosts in different cities. The family is very eccentric regardless, but also the protagonist has this power that she's hiding from other people. She can see ghosts. She even has a ghost friend. And when she and her family move to Edinburgh, she is overwhelmed with the number of ghosts that she sees because the city is very old. And also she starts noticing that she gets pulled into the other realm, into the realm of ghosts, and cannot get out of it as easily as she was when she was still home. Very cool concept, perfect for fall. I love middle grade novels that have fall vibes because that is the only horror that I can read. Obviously it's not horror because it's for middle graders, but this is the level of creepy that I can handle. Everything on top of that is just not for me. The series, I believe, has 2 or 3 books now, and I think all of them are on Scribd. The first one for sure is on Scribd. The last book that I want to recommend is the one that I read at the start of this year and had no chance to talk about much. It's Blood Countess by Lana Popovic. This is a story about Elizabeth Bathory, who is known for killing virgins and women and bathing in their blood. If you've never heard about her and you want to know more, I'm going to link 𝕊𝕌𝕻𝕻𝕍 video on her because she had done one recently, and if you're not watching 𝕊𝕌𝕻𝕻𝕍, what are you doing with your life? This one is a retelling. It's not historically accurate to the T, but we don't really know even the date of birth of Elizabeth Bathory. It doesn't diminish the quality of the book. It is very tense, very suspenseful, very creepy. It has some really dark elements, and it follows not Elizabeth Bathory herself, but her victim. It's the woman that was hired into the castle because Elizabeth Bathory saw that she is very talented with healing, and Elizabeth Bathory had some health issues because of the inbreeding. She suffered very intense seizures and migraines, and she believed that the protagonist will cure her, but the protagonist at the start didn't know the length Elizabeth Bathory is willing to go to get rid herself of pain and to be beautiful forever. This one has a very fucked up toxic FF relationship between Elizabeth Bathory and the protagonist. There are also some speculations that Elizabeth Bathory was queer. It is not painting queerness as evil though, because the protagonist is a lesbian. It is just an element of the book that shows how the protagonist lowered her guard and entered a toxic environment because she believed that she's going to be loved. I really enjoyed this novel, and I do not see many people talk about it on BookTube, so I decided to bring it to your attention. These are all the books that I want to recommend to read this fall that are not romances. For romances, check out the other video. And all of this are in Scribd, so if you're using Scribd, as always, you are in luck. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave some of your recommendations in the comments down below. And on that note, I'll see you soon with another video, but until then,